Hello, welcome back to Smart Martial Arts, the YouTube channel where we go over everything martial arts. In this video, I guess I interviewed two people, one a non-black belt and one a second-degree black belt, of what they think a black belt is and a few other questions along with that one. But before we get into that, just some news. For me, I'm not going to go too much into this, but over the weekend, I guess it'd be 2 weekends ago. The weekend before the last video came out, which was why I do martial arts. That Sunday beforehand was a black belt test for 7 first degrees going for their second degree black belts. But at the end of that, I was surprised by a promotion to sensei. So I am now a sensei. It's official. I don't have my gi on. I have a patch here. That gi is one of the logo on it, so it's not going to be on this video, but I am a sensei now. So into the actual part of the video, the way I'm going to do this is I have the actual interviews, which I will put in before I summarize what was talked about between the two people, meaning the person interviewed and me. Before I say that, before I get into it, one thing is I don't interview people very often, so give me some slack on that. I think that's it for that. So the first person that the first video that I'll show is a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who does not do martial arts and knows what I tell him and just other stuff that he knows, but he's super passionate about it. He is sometimes more excited than I am when I tell him certain things that happen. He was super thrilled when I told him I was a sensei, and when I told him I was a black belt. Super excited. So I'm going to throw his video. It's kind of long, but I'm going to summarize. At the end of it, I'll come back, and it'll be me summarizing what we talked about. The only thing I'm not going to summarize is at the end of each part of the video, the 2 videos of the interviews that I did. I gave them time to ask me a question. Those I'm not going to go over. I will for, his name is Jack, I will for Jack's video, just because I want to change my answer and talk about it a little bit more than I did in the actual video. So other than that, I'm not going to specifically talk about them, like with the second degree. I'm not going to talk about what we talked about. You're going to have to watch that yourself. But right now, I'm going to play the video of me and Jack's conversation, and he is the one who does not do martial arts.
Definition of black belt. So definition of a black belt for me would be someone takes something that everyone sees as just as like, okay, it's so hard to explain, but so as a kid, there's always the fair.
Yeah.
At the fair, there's always a karate stand where they'd be like, oh, come do karate. And I remember always going up to it and being, I want to do this, just because I wanted to go and like hit and punch.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so cool, I get to hit people. And then like, I remember getting older and being like, no, it's not that. And like, you learn like there's so much discipline, and you don't hit unless it's like brought upon you, and like all this like these tiny things that are a part of it. And I always remember thinking like, it's like taking every kid's like, so every kid has been into karate at some point.
Oh yeah.
Every kid said,
Every kid
says, I want to do karate. They do like 3 classes. They don't do karate again.
Yeah, no, exactly.
They take that and you go above and beyond it. And you're like, well, this is something I enjoy, and this is something I'm gonna dedicate like a part of my life to. Like, so for me, as a kid, it was boats and the Coast Guard. That's all I cared about. For you, it was karate and learning about all these forms and just so much more a part of it.
So, what do you think, like, other than from what you've heard from me, what do you think is, like, the way you get to it? Like, the journey of it?
So, see, this is where I'm going to sound bad. The only journey I could think of it is, like, so you go white, and I think it's, like, yellow.
Yeah.
Right, so you go through these colors.
Yeah.
All I could tell you from the colors is that there's a test in it.
Okay.
And I know that you get a belt at the end of the test.
Okay.
And I know that within the test, it's not a lot of... The test is more of you doing the forms.
Yeah.
Where it's not like... You don't always spar in the test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so at the end of the test, you know, your sensei or whoever, he's watched it and he says, all right, he's good enough at this, and he shows the not necessarily the level of maturity, because like, you know, when you're a white belt, you could be any age, but they're showing that you have the level of like recognition, like cognizance, that like you know what's happening. And then at some point you get where they're like, this kid is good enough where he could be a black belt, which is like, he could be someone that people look at and they're like, holy shit, he's a black belt. Like,
Do you think a black belt is significantly different than any other belt
I think
at face value?
Face value,
Like if you saw a black belt versus, let's say, like a green belt.
see, I know that because I remember talking to someone about this, that there are green belts that can be way better than the black belt.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. It's just because of how long they've been doing it, or like what studio they went to.
Yeah.
So like, I know that in that sense of like actual sparring, that there could, or even forms, that there could be a green belt that's better than the black. But then I know that in a good dojo theory, that the black belt should not necessarily, even if they're not better in the sense, they're just like, they have like a different meaning of karate to them than the green.
Do you think I had an actual question for this.
Was it one of the ones you sent me?
No, it was something that you just brought up. I'll think about it later.
Okay. You said when someone tells you I'm a black belt, what is my first thought?
Yeah.
Same thing. You've taken like karate's a sport. You've taken the sport and you've gone above and beyond in it. So like, in a awful analogy, basketball, every kid's dream is they want to play varsity high school basketball or college basketball. A black belt, like, that's like, you're at college level right now, but you still have like, or you'd be like varsity because you still got all these degrees you got to go through before you're like, you know, grandmaster, whatever the fuck you want to get to. Because like, there's definitely people out there who are like, oh, I don't like, grandmaster isn't my top goal. This is my top goal.
Okay.
Or maybe I could be wrong. Maybe everyone's goal out there is I want to be the grandmaster.
What do you think? Because this will happen, where nothing against them, because I've had this experience. People who get to black belt and then either are like, where do I go from here, or they just quit. What do you think? Like, for your opinion, if someone's like, I'm a black belt, but then I stopped once I got it, what would your thought be for that? Like, what would you tell them?
So a kid I went to school with did that, and my personal opinion upon it was that it showed that all they cared about was the rank. And it's not really a rank, but you know what I mean. All they cared about was the material value of a black belt. And that's it. They didn't actually care about what they were learning or anything to that level. Like, all they cared about was, I want to be able to tell people I'm a black belt, so they think, you know, I'm a black belt. Like, oh yeah, I'm a black belt. Ooh. That's what I think about that. Like, you have so much more you could go, but you're just like, I quit. I'm done.
If someone, let's say, just kind of throw you in a bus. If you were in a class, let's say you either just started or you're kind of in, like, you're not halfway through the belts yet, and a black belt walks in, what would your reaction be?
Definitely show the respect they deserve.
Now, let's say you're not a student, and you're just there in the lobby of a dojo for whatever reason.
Right.
And then a black belt walks in. What do you do then?
Me personally, I mean, still, like, that's so hard. I'd still show them the respect they deserve, but I feel like it's on a different level. Because in the karate level, you have a whole new meaning of it. Where in like it's not like you're still a civilian, but you know what I mean. Like a non-karate personnel, it'd just be like that's a black belt. That dude's like, he's gone above and beyond. And he still has, like, if he's still there showing up for classes, it shows that he's still got a little bit more that he wants to go. Like, he's still hungry.
What would your thought be if someone walked in, let's say like a second degree walked in, and then like a seventh degree walked in?
Okay.
Would you have a completely be like, oh shit? Or what would your mindset be if you saw that?
If I saw a 7th degree, I'd definitely have the oh shit mentality.
Is there like a different understanding? Would you treat them differently if one was a 3rd, one was a 7th? I guess I don't think treating them differently is the right term.
I know what
Would
you
you
mean, though.
react differently, I guess? Or would it kind of be the same thing?
I think in a sense I would,
Okay.
because I remember always watching like Shaolin Warriors.
Yeah.
Like as a kid, I always watched those stupid documentaries that were probably fake. I'm realizing now, but like I remember watching those and being like, "Wow, that dude's sick."
Mhm.
And so like, I'd still be like third degree, like you're a beast.
Yeah.
But like seventh degree, like you went like again. You took this thing that I always thought was cool because you had to hit people, and you said, "No, there's so much more to it."
I think that's it. I guess I could end this. Do you have any questions for me? As someone, I don't know what I'll do with this footage yet. But assuming this goes in, if it's in the video, do you have any questions for me? Because I will preface this in the video, but he does not do martial arts.
Right.
As someone who knows what I've told them, plus whatever else they've done
Mm-hmm.
in life, what questions do you have?
What are your thoughts upon the videos of the dudes who like use the force? You know what I mean? Where they're like, "What?" Like chi balls.
Yeah.
And like the guys who like drilled, like they, you know, like it's like the Asian guys and they have like the drills to their head and they're like, "Oh."
Yeah.
What are your thoughts upon that?
So this is a conversation we have in class sometimes, where it's my first reaction is
Right.
because it's not just like the come on, everyone knows that, but it's the fact that some people will actually believe that works.
Right. Like the chi balls and all
Yeah, that'll actually work. But if it's not from like the standpoint of I'm teaching them to defend themselves, like as a teacher, where I know at some point, if someone, that's the only interaction they have, they might do that in a fight, then my action's like, come on.
Mhm.
But other than that, it's kind of funny because I don't know the mentality of why you would do that. But as someone who obviously has gone through the years and gotten the black belt, it's like you have no idea.
Right.
It's
The
fun.
guys who are doing it, they're always like old fat white dudes.
And they always have like a shit ton of degrees on a black belt if they're wearing a belt at all.
If they're wearing a belt, that shit has like 85 degrees and they're like rainbowed out and then it's like
Yeah, they
got-
have a cape.
Yeah, they got 4 belts on.
They have some weird title.
Yeah, they're like, "You shall call me Grandmaster Shaolin of the 55th degree."
Yeah, it's just some. I mean, it's funny to see.
So you view it as funny though.
Yeah, but like face value, it's funny. But other than that, it's kind of like really.
But you guys, like as a, your, or any of them, even you guys don't like view as like you don't look down upon them for doing that, do you? Or do you? Is there a sense of like, come on, man, like you're kind of ruining what?
Yes, that's in anything like in the dojo and online, like in Sensei Seth.
Uh-huh.
I think they're called McDojos. There's a definite, from what I can tell from Sensei Seth, and definitely from my opinion and other people in my dojo, there's definitely like a really.
So
It's kind of like if you do this and people find out it's bullshit, it kind of does the same thing with like one bad cop will ruin that. So I think at some point I go like, really?
Mm-hmm.
You're ruining what it actually is.
Right.
Um,
You're giving people a false
Yeah.
false identity of what karate is.
yeah, false sense of like security and identity. So yeah, I think it's definitely like a really.
Interesting.
Are there any other questions?
No, that's it.
All right.
Okay, so that was me and Jack's conversation, and he was the one who did not do martial arts. If you watched all of that, thank you. It was a very fun conversation that me and him had, but if not, I'm going to summarize. The first question I asked him was his definition of a black belt, and he said something along the lines of someone who takes something they like and go above and beyond, and then makes it a part of their life. There might be a little bit of cutting just to cut out me looking, because I can't read my notes, but I'll try to make it as good as possible. So his definition of a black belt is super fitting. These are all their personal opinions. I'm not going to tear down their personal opinions, but I will talk about them if I have a response. His definition I really don't have like a response to. I think it's pretty solid and kind of what you'd expect, and I think what most people would think about being a black belt. But the second question I asked was what he thought the journey was. And he said, as he doesn't know, his thing was just a series of belts and tests, or just a series of belts with tests at the end. But one thing that I liked that I didn't talk about in the thing, I didn't think about it, but he said at the end of the test, it goes from you're good enough to go to the next belt, something like that. And I was watching it again. I like that. The good enough part is super important because as an instructor who has given promotions and who thinks about promotions all the time, I don't expect the other instructors in my school to do that. We don't want you to be perfect. We don't expect you to be perfect. If you're going from the belt before black to black belt, we're not gonna just assume you know everything, you're perfect. We're gonna be okay with mistakes. So it's a very important thing that the good enough part is, of course, as you go up in the belts, we expect something from you, but we never expect you to be perfect. At no point, really there's no rank other than maybe like the very high degrees where I expect you to be perfect with every detail. I can't speak for other instructors, but I'm assuming they're probably going to think the same thing. So the third thing I asked him was, what is your first thought when someone tells you they're a black belt? And his response is very similar to the definition of a black belt. It's just someone who takes it above and beyond. And that's fair. When I didn't do martial arts or before I got my black belt, there's definitely someone, like, I guess the stigma of like, oh, this person can kick my ass. And I'm going to, at the end of this, talk about my personal opinion on a black belt, but the whole like kick your ass thing it could be true depending on what they do and how they are, but for the most part, they're probably going to be more reluctant to fight you, if anything, just because they know so much what it can do. And if they do fight you, they're probably either going to be super gentle about it, or they're just going to be, I'm done with this fight and I'm ending it in any way I can. So it's going to be one or the other, but for the most part, if they're what I personally think is a good martial artist, they're not going to just go after you and kick the shit out of you for no reason. They're going to be very reluctant to fight you and kind of push it away like, hey, I don't want to do this right now. So the fourth thing I asked him was, what is his opinion on black belts who get there and quit? And his response was, the personal opinion is what he framed it with, was all they care about was the material value. And I loved that watching it again because, being someone who is passionate about martial arts and someone who looks at it a different way, it's not so much the material value where, yeah, it's cool to have a black belt. I'm very proud. It's very cool. I look at it and I'm like, good job. But it's more than just like you said, the material value. It's a journey, and not everyone can do this, and everyone is a black belt in their own right. I'll go into that, but it's like a personal journey that the black belt just kind of signals to you that, hey, you've made it and you've done what you wanted to do. The next question I asked it's kind of a two-part question, is if you're a student, what would you do if a black belt walked in? And his opinion, or his answer, was show the respect they deserve, which is fair. I think for any belt, regardless of if they're higher or lower than who you are, where you are, you should show them respect regardless. So I can't really argue and say anything about that. But I then asked him if he wasn't a student, what would his opinion be? And he'd say the same amount of respect, but a different kind of respect. And I can't speak for him what he thinks that the different kind of respect is. So I'm not even gonna attempt to. But I think the part that respect is a big thing, because even if you don't do martial arts and you couldn't really care about them, people know that it's a hard thing to get and what it means to them. So I think respect is a great thing to show, to just kind of, be like, hey, you earned it, and I think it's perfect that you are doing this. It's kind of a weird thing, but it doesn't change. I think that the overall point of that was show them respect. Everyone should show and be shown respect, regardless of what rank they're, what title they are, if they just started, if they've been there for 20 years. Anything like that, they should still be shown respect. And the next question I asked him was kind of similar. It was, what would you do if a third degree walked in versus a seventh degree? I think is the questions that I asked. And he said that there would be a definite different reaction, because I think he said that while you're a third degree, yeah, you're still a badass and you know your stuff. But a seventh degree is someone who has taken it and gone so far above and beyond, like he said with the definition. But to me, it sounded like he meant something different. Like, seventh degree, you don't see a lot of. Normally, if you go to just a normal dojo, kind of just, whatever, you're going to see, like, the highest rank you're probably going to see is, like, a fifth degree master or shihan, whatever you want to call them. Other than that, you're probably not going to see a lot higher than that unless you have a very big school and a very popular sport, or martial art, I should say, style. So you're probably not going to see anything higher, but if you did see, like, if I saw a seventh degree, and I would treat, again, everyone with respect. And the only third degree I know him pretty decently. But I think, to me, not to crap on a third degree that I know, but I think that there would be a definite different way I handle a 7-3 personally, or any rank that's high. And high ranks for me, just because of who I'm around, is like 5th degree and above. But any high degree black belt, I would definitely treat differently, or not treat differently, but show a little bit more respect, because they've had to go through so much. It's a very long journey. They've probably sacrificed quite a bit in their life. They know so much, and just the overall, they care about it, and it's just an overall, one of the key things in anything that you do, especially martial arts, is respect. So I'm going to mention that quite a bit, but I think personally, it wouldn't differ and it wouldn't be huge, but I think there would be like a half step more respect for any high rank versus like a 2nd or 3rd degree. I hope that doesn't make me sound like a terrible person, but there would definitely be a little bit more to show that, oh hey, you've put in the extra effort, I guess. Extra effort, extra whatever you want to call it. So going away from Jack's conversation, the next conversation I had was with a 2nd degree, and she was one of the people in that test I was talking about at the beginning of the video. She was one of the 7. And it wasn't as long as a conversation. We don't really know each other very well. But I think it was still a good conversation. And as I said, I'm a 1st degree, and she's a 2nd degree, so there's an obvious, different element of me interviewing a 2nd degree, like, hey, what do you think? But I don't think she took it that way. But I want to play our interview, or I guess my interview with her right now. So, what is your definition of a black belt?
We always have that saying at karate at this school where a black belt's a white belt that never quits. Someone who works hard to achieve their goal in karate, whatever type of martial art that is. It's someone who works hard, knows their stuff, and just overall. We used to have a sign up here. It was like modesty, courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control. That embodies all of the good traits, and is able to also throw.
Okay. And then when someone tells you, I'm a black belt, what is your first reaction? What's your first thought?
It's like, oh, like me. Like, I was asked people what type of karate they do, how long they've been doing it. It's more just like, oh, that's something cool we have in common. That's awesome. That's really cool that they do too.
And then the last one is, now that you're a black belt, and now a 2nd degree black belt, when you started karate, your definition probably changed. How did it change when you got your black belt? And I guess now that you're a 2nd degree, how did it change then?
From when I first got when I first started?
Yeah, for when you started going in, your thought of a black belt, how has that changed now that you are one?
I started when I was 3, but...
Okay, slight flex.
No, I went to a bad school. I started here when I was 7.
Okay, yeah.
But when I first started, I definitely looked up to people. I thought they were so cool. I was like, oh, wow, they know all this stuff. It's awesome. I looked up to if you knew her.
I did.
I found someone to look up to, and I thought that was really awesome, and it seemed almost unachievable back then. 1st degree, like looking up to a 2nd degree black belt.
Or just like your definition, how did that change now that you were a black belt?
It definitely was more reachable. I believed in myself more. I thought, black belts, like anyone could do it if you have the right mindset. And the definition of black belt, definitely still everything that it embodies, like I said before, definitely that.
And then now that you're 2nd degree, has it changed anything? Or is it kind of still the same thing?
I'd say it's kind of still the same.
Yeah, still the same thing.
2nd degree, you have 2 more years of experience, but you still know what you should be embodying and stuff.
Is that it? I think that might be it. I think that's it.
Awesome.
Do you have any questions for me?
Do I have questions for you?
I know I'm only a first. I'm only a lowly 1st degree, but I did the same thing for him.
You're a sensei, so it's different.
Okay. Then what questions? If you have any. You don't have to force
What
yourself.
made you want to become a sensei?
So it's kind of funny. I actually didn't want to be one, but I should say that I'm going to explain that. When I started, obviously I wanted to be a black belt, and that was my goal. I never at one point did I ever want to like look at a sensei like I want to be that until I started to teach, and I was like, oh, that's right, that's a name, and I asked him about it, and his response was, you have to. The 2 requirements in this school is he has to trust you teaching a class by yourself, and you have to teach for a year. So the reason why it was so shocking when I got it is because I haven't been teaching for a year.
Oh wow.
Like I started to teach in July or August, so that was just sprung on me.
Wow.
So it was kind of the story of like how I accidentally became a sensei, but I mean I'm super proud of myself. So super fun.
That's definitely awesome.
Yeah. Any other questions, or are you good?
I think I'm good.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Of course.
Again, that was a second degree black belt who I just talked to about it, and I asked her 3 questions. The first one was the same one as I asked Jack. It was, what is your definition of a black belt? And she said, what I took from it was, works hard and then knows their stuff. So I think that's a very fair definition. That's the definition that I think most martial artists, and probably 99% of martial artists would give you if they were to see a black belt and maybe not think about it the same way other martial artists may. I think that's a great definition. I think the knows your stuff is definitely a good part. I think Jack also mentioned that there's a definite level of knowledge to go from a different level of knowledge, I should say, going from the ranks below black to black belt and above. I think knowledge is one of the key things. If you don't know your stuff, then really, why would you go for it? There are definitely exceptions. I will talk about that later on. But for the most part, 95% of black belts are there because they know what they're doing and they know it either so well or they've just done it for so long. That it's just time. And then with that, she also said that a black belt is someone who displays, I'm going to mug in here, modesty, courtesy, integrity, perseverance, and self-control. I think that's a very good thing to mention. The only thing is I would add respect on that because I'm a huge fan of respect, even though I may not seem like it in class. But I'm a huge fan of respect. So I think those are great, but I would just tag that on. But she was remembering something, so she didn't get all this. I'm not going to yell at her for it. But I think the self-control is probably the second most important, probably third most important of those, because at a black belt, what I like to tell the black belts that I teach, if I teach any, is that at some point, I guess the higher ranks, along with black belts, but there should be some level of contact. Like if you're training a combination, if you can hit, if it's a safe attack to do, then hit lightly. But if you can't, then obviously don't. But that's not something I really tell my intermediate beginner class, because it's definitely a hard thing because you don't really know what it can do. But as you get experience, and if you're more experienced intermediate beginner rank, then I don't have a problem with it. But self-control, again, super important, because we expect people to, in class when you're in advanced rank, to start showing that you can control yourself, you can hit, and you know where all the strikes are going. That's super important to me. When I see people do it in the air, if I see someone do like a combination super fast, most of the time I'll stop them and I'll ask them what the strikes were or where they're going, or both, just to know, because that's something that's important to me personally. So self-control is good. Respect, I think, is number 1. And the other one is modesty and courtesy. I'm not going to define them. I'm probably going to get this horribly wrong. Oops, whatever. It's definitely a thing where you kind of have to be modest with it, where you can't just walk around, especially if you teach. You can't walk around with your chest pumped out, looking up, looking down on people. You can't do that. You have to respect that people are on their journey, and if anything, you should be not thankful, but you should understand and be like, hey, that's awesome. How can I do anything to help? Because I was there once. And one of my philosophies of teaching is I want to get someone. So if I'm teaching a green belt, I want to get them to be a better green belt than I ever was and ever could be. That's one of the ways that I teach, and I'm going to do a teaching video later on. But modesty and courtesy is super important, especially if you are a high rank, or you're the only black belt in the class, where you have to kind of show, and you have to be a role model of what a black belt should and could be. And then I also asked her first reaction to when someone tells you I'm a black belt. And this is the same thing that I do, is instantly when someone tells me that they're a black belt, I will ask, how long have you been doing it? And what style? And For the most part, we were in class right after karate, so I think she probably meant like what style of karate you do. But I would just ask what style of martial art, like karate, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, Aikido, anything like that. But that's the first thing is like, oh my god, that's so awesome. We have this in common, which is something else she mentioned, something in common. And then when I talk about like, hey, how long have you been doing it? What style? What made you want to do it? It's something that I would just instantly talk about and probably annoy them quite a bit, but that's a very good first reaction because I think most people who do martial arts and are of a higher rank would probably have the exact same reaction to not even I'm a black belt, but I do martial arts. It's going to be those same two questions, maybe plus or minus a few more, depending on how you look at it. But I think that's a very genuine and probably the most common reaction if someone tells you I'm a black belt or I do martial arts. That exact same reaction. So I think that's great. So the next question I asked was the only one that's very different than the ones I asked Jack, and that was, now that you're a black belt, did your definition and has your definition changed? And when she started, the one she told me was she looked up to the black belt and she thought it was unachievable. And I think that's fair. You always go into something like, oh, I'm never going to do that, especially when you realize how long it's going to take, like 5 years. I'm not going to make it that long. I'm not going to be here for that long. I'm not going to like it that long. Just so much like, it's never going to happen. But then when she got it, she said it seemed more achievable and that everyone can do it. And I think that's 100% accurate, where it isn't a very achievable thing. It might take people with different skill sets and different ages and different capabilities. It might take them a little bit longer and a little bit of a harder time, but anyone can be a black belt. And I'm going to, again, go into this more, but anyone can be a black belt, and it's very achievable. You just have to be aware of the time it will take and the overall toll and, the overall toll it'll take on your life by taking time that you can be with friends and family, but you're focusing on this. So I think that's awesome. It's very achievable, and I agree with her. It's a very achievable goal that I think everyone can and should do, personally. And then, because she's also a second degree black belt, I asked her, now that she's a second, has it changed at all? And she said that it's the same definition that she had at the beginning, but it's just you have more experience. And I think that's a good thing to mention is, in some styles you have to put in extra amount of time, where 5 years to go from white belt to black belt, and you have to wait 2 or 3 years to go to your second degree. You have to wait exponentially, whatever. I think the experience is definitely a big thing because, believe it or not, experience is everything in martial arts. That's how it used to be. Before there was the actual ranking system where it was white, yellow, orange, whatever it is in your style. That's what it was. It was just a white rope that eventually over time got turned black. And it's always been experience. And you can be the greatest person out of form, but you've only been doing martial arts for a week. That doesn't qualify you to be a black belt. It's one qualification, yes, I guess, but it's not the overall defining characteristic. It's experience, how long you've been doing it, how confident you're doing it. It's everything like that. But other than that, that was the only questions that me and Catherine went over because it was just after class, and I'm assuming that she wanted to go home, and I wanted to keep it quick so I could, not have her get pissed off. But now I want to talk about a little bit more of my opinion. And I should preface this with saying that a few weeks ago when I first came up with the idea for this video, there was the 5th degree, the Shihan that I'm always talking about, I'm going to continue talking about. I asked him if he would be an interviewer, or an interviewee, I guess, in this video. And the reason he isn't is either I didn't ask him, so I have no idea what his thing is, but I was way too scared to ask him. So if you see this, Shihan, sorry if you wouldn't mind. And if you guys want to see more interviews like this where I ask people these questions, I'll absolutely do that. But we talked about it for 10-15 minutes, and I agree with some of the things he said. And the first thing that he really mentioned was, it's hard to give a solid definition because every black belt, meaning a person who is a black belt, gets it for a different reason. And I think that's amazing. And that's I've adopted that. So I kind of stole that from him, sorry. But there's the obvious definitions of someone who knows their stuff. But it's also hard to do that where an overall encompassing thing, where that's very fair, the knows your stuff. But if you start to go deeper than that, which I like to think I can do, and I do a lot, everyone gets it for a different reason. People could do it just because it's a fun thing, or they want to build a resume, or they want to have a place where they can go, and they just they don't accidentally, I guess, but they just get there because they love it so much, and they didn't specifically go into it trying to get a black belt, but they just got it. And I think it's kind of hard because then that also gets to the point where people will get their black belt from an instructor for a different reason, while they're either amazing at their material, they're great at teaching, or just because they can defend themselves, and it's just kind of like, yeah, they are at a second degree or third degree or fourth degree or first degree rank of, hey, they can defend themselves. It's not going to be a problem for them. So I think it depends on the person. So other than just the fact that everyone is a black belt for a different reason or a different cause or whatever, I think the definition that Catherine gave is just that you know your stuff and you're dedicated. And I think a very big part of it is dedication, where, as I said, anyone can be a black belt, but you have to want to be a black belt. You can't go in like, I'm going to be a black belt. Like, that's great. That's the mentality you should have. But you also have to remember that it's going to take some time. The average is 4.5 to 5 years. That's a lot of time. I started high school the summer going into freshman year, I started, and I didn't get my black belt until after high school, the summer after high school. That a lot of things happened, and happened to me in high school. So you're a completely different person when you started than when you. Everything that Catherine and Jack said was absolutely amazing. I do thank them. If they do watch this at some point, I do thank you for giving me the time out of your day to allow me to do this, and allow you to be on this channel. So it means a lot. But to fully wrap this up, if you want to see more of me asking and interviewing other black belts, and maybe not even black belts, people who aren't there yet but who have the martial arts experience, or people who don't do martial arts, any other kind of interview stuff where I do like this video, leave it in the comments. If you have any questions for me, leave those in the comments. If you want me to talk about, again, leave those in the comments. That's all I have. If I remember anything, I might do another video and kind of just throw that in. I'll mention that if I can remember something that I want to add. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.